Good. Steve's got his own.
I think that is so wonderful, and it's not just the menu cut; it's the punctuation. So a question is a question, and not a declarative statement.
Good, excellent. Yeah, this is a step in the right direction. We're making progress over here. Okay, hi Steve. Do you have in front of you? He's got his own Mishnah Berurah. He came prepared. Excellent. Fantastic. And a big mazel tov to Steve Smith.
What do I do?
Of his son.
Yeah.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, of course. Okay, we are up to Reish Mem Hey. We are doing Hilchot Shabbat. And we are up to Sif Gimel. Aleph and Bet had to do with how do you deal with partnerships and splitting up the business, and if you make a tanai before the business partnership, where you basically completely disengage. Lloyd, hello. Okay, good morning. Here you go. Where you completely disengage from the Shabbos aspect of it as part of the deal going in. You never had a chelek in the work on Shabbos, and therefore you say, oh, you do Saturday, I do Sunday. The non-Jew is not the shaliach for your half of the business on Saturdays. You had nothing to do with the business from the get-go on Saturdays. So that's what we had talked about previously. We saw that Ramah, where he quotes the Ran, a very much more lenient opinion that basically if the Jew and the non-Jew are working together every day, not that you take this and I do that, and you really kind of split the business, whether you split each day half, or you split the days of the week half, or whatever the arrangement, it could be 60-40. Then if you choose as the Jew not to work on Shabbos, and the non-Jew continues to do the work on Shabbos, well, that was that's the non-Jew making a decision that they want to work. They want to keep the business open. I don't care. If it closed, open. As far as I'm concerned, I'm happy if it's closed. But he wants to make more money. So if the business is split 50-50 in terms of profits, so I get 50%. It's a hana memei. It's a hana that came to you memela. It's not because you did anything or had him working as your shaliach. You really you had nothing to do with the business. You always work together. You say, hey, I'm not showing up. You want to do all the work by yourself and keep the business open? That's you. And he says, yeah, of course I want to.
Who holds like that?
That was the Ramaz Psak, and he was quoting from the Ran. With that. Yeah. Okay, now let's take a look at Gimel. So this is page. I made a copy from the beginning of Reish Mem Hey, so you're gonna have to turn one page. It's the last word on the Shulchan Aruch on the second page. It says page 14 on the top. Reish Mem Hey Sif Gimel. Okay. And the Mechaber writes as follows. He says, Heicha shelo hisnu b'tchila. When there is no stipulation made at the beginning of the partnership, yesh tikun al yedei sheyachazir hamocher lahem demei hakarka o sheyimkaruhu leish acher v'yachzeru v'yiknuhu b'shutafus v'yasnu b'shas hakniyah. He says when there's no tanai made at the beginning of the deal, so there is a tikkun. You can fix the situation. Let's say you only came to this class after you had made the partnership, and now you learned about this whole idea that you really have to make a tanai in order to remove yourself from the business on Shabbos. It has to be done at the beginning. Again, notwithstanding what the Ran said that the Ramah quoted. Remember, the Mechaber is not working with that. It's not on his radar. He didn't pass him like that. And we should never assume that when we see the Ramah interject a comment that the Shulchan Aruch saw it before he rather than continue with his writing. It's not how it works. The Ramah added his comments later. So he says as a tikkun, if you didn't make it tonight, that you should return to the seller of the business. So you bought with your non-Jewish partner a business. So you should return along with the non-Jewish partner. You should return the business to the original seller.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Rob, the Ramah and the Mechaber lived at the same time.
They overlapped.
They never collaborated.
So the Ramah, he writes in his introduction, I think, to the Darkei Moshe, which is like the Beis Yosef. So the Beis Yosef was written on the tour. So the Darkei Moshe, that was his work on the tour, and it was originally supposed to be a work on the tour, but then I think he writes in his introduction that his world shook when he heard that Yosef Karo had basically beaten him to the punch of writing a code.
Right.
And so he then amended what he had written basically just to simply reflect the Ashkenazic psak, when it differed from what the Mechaber had presented.
Without sitting down with him?
I don't know if he eventually at some point met with him. He was obviously, at some point he becomes aware of his work, and I'm sure the Mechaber, Yosef Karo, was aware of Moshe Isserlis. But when he wrote, the Beis Yosef and he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, I don't think he was looking at what the Ramah had written yet.
So the Mechaber actually published before the Ramah?
Yes. Yes. Okay. He came first. Absolutely. Yes.
I don't think they met.
I'm not sure that they
One was
met.
in Poland, the other one was
Yeah,
in
if they
Israel.
met, maybe it was one time or something like that. I have no idea if they even met at all. They corresponded by letter. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what their
The
personal
Ramah was in
relationship was.
Poland. Where was the Mechaber?
In Israel.
He ends up in Sfat.
Sfat.
He before that, I think he was living. Is he living in Egypt or something like that, or is it in Morocco? I don't remember
Okay.
now. I don't remember.
Either case, they were not
Okay.
close to each other.
Yeah, it would have been quite a journey.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so the seller has to return the Demei HaKarka, the value of, let's say they bought land together. Or he could not sell, he doesn't have to go back to the original owner, he can sell it to somebody else. Yimkaru La'ish Acher. Just anybody, the point is undo what was done. Undo the business partnership. And then what should you do? Go back and purchase it as partners once again, and this time you'll make the Tanai, Bisha Sakniya, at the moment of the kinyan, of the transaction. Let's take a look at the Yudalit in the Mishnah Berurah, and then we'll go back upstairs in a moment. Sheyachzir hamocher lahem ubechoshen mishpat. In Choshen Mishpat, one of the other chalakim of Shulchan Aruch. Okay, it deals with the laws of business transactions is included in there, and there it talks about isa shetzarich ata kinyan mechadash lahaknos lahamocher. You need a new kinyan to be able to return it to the mocher, to the original seller. Velo sagi bazeh sheyachzir lo hadamim v'hashtar bechira. And you can't just go, so you made the kinyan, and now 2 days later you realize, what did we do? Made a mistake. I should have just taken care of this right at the time of the kinyan. So you go back and you say to the original owner, here, take the money back, and then the seller, right, gives the money back to the Jew and the non-Jew, the partners. And they say, okay, here, fine, you take it back again, like a little, switcheroo. And then here, there was a shtar, there was a document of the transaction, which is probably in the hands of the mocher, if I had to guess. It's probably in the hands of the seller. So the seller says, here, take it back. And he says, okay, I got the kinyan here, and you take the shtar back. And do a little quick transfer. It's not so simple.
He says low sagi.
It's not enough. It's not enough to do that. Why is it not enough to do that? He doesn't spell it out here, but I believe that the reason here, and again, in the Dirshu Mishnah Berurah, they have some commentary here, is why is the problem? And it becomes much more a problem when the original seller was a non-Jew. The reason is because a kinyan between a Jew and a non-Jew, particularly, this comes up on Erev Pesach, when we sell chametz, is not so simple. The Gemara never talks about how to affect the kinyan with a non-Jew. It talks about how to affect the kinyan with another Jew. And so maybe it's the same. But there are many Rishonim who are, very in doubt about this method. So we actually, when we do mechiras chametz, we make essentially 7 kinyanim to sell the chametz. So it's not just here, here's a piece of paper telling you where the chametz is and here's the money. The non-Jew doesn't just present money. You do a kinyan chalipin, you do a kinyan kesef, you do you do a kinyan on the karka, on the place where the chametz is, and then you do a kinyan agav along with that, where the chametz that's in the place in the places where the chametz are, the cabinets are sold, and then there's a kinyan that where basically the food, the metaltlin, comes along with the karka. It's called kinyan agav karka. So there are 7 kinyanim, and you shake hands. That's a midrabanan works called situmta. So you have different methods, and you would have to do that here. You have to really make sure you cover all your bases when you return it, and then when you repurchase it, you also have to do the same thing. So you can't just be like, here, take the money back and then give it back. You have to go through the whole process again. It's there's no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts here.
Why can't the partners just draw up a new partnership agreement? I mean, forget about the way we bought it. Now we're going to run the business this way. Why can't they just do that?
Oh, you're saying like that? So because once the Jew was shaykh to Shabbos at any point, I hear what you're saying. You're saying let's just make a new contract between each other. But the point is that when you became relevant to this business with your partner, you had a stake in the Shabbos, in Shabbos with regards to this business. And so even though you may change the arrangement so that you can try to remove yourself. So again, the rabbis were concerned in that situation that I don't know if it's because of Maris Ayin or at that point or you could say because when you change the business around, simply the non-Jew is now the shaliach. I got something in that deal, right? When we flipped how we're going to do it, so I got Sundays out of that, and he got Saturdays. So when he's working Saturdays on my behalf, because it's my business too on Saturday, he's my shaliach. That's always the problem here, so much more so than Maris Ayin. It's the shaliach concern that you are doing the work. The non-Jew is doing the work on Shabbos, and they're doing it on my behalf, and I got something out of that because now I get all the Sunday profits. So his working on Saturday is my shaliach, and that gives me access to something more in the business. That's why if you just are from the beginning not relevant to Shabbos, that's when Chazal were okay with this. Again, it's a halacha midrabanan, so the rabbis can define the parameters of this halacha, and that's how they drew it up.
So Rav, if the Jew is not aware of the prohibition of creating this lechatchila economic relationship with the non-Jew, he's not aware, and he becomes aware of it, let's say a couple of years into the relationship, what happens with the prior earned monies? What do we do about that?
If they didn't have it tonight.
Correct.
So the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch Paskins like this in Sif Aleph, he says that you should take the overall business, how it does every week, give 1/7 immediately to the non-Jewish partner, and then take the rest and split it. That's the Rambam's resolution if there's no tonight.
So it's almost like a kinas.
In some sense, you could say it's a kinas, meaning you didn't do this, so now you get nothing of Shabbos, or at least we take it 1/7, where we assume that we don't start calculating how much was on Saturday, how much was on Friday, and then the rest you split.
Thank
you. Yeah. Okay. Last thing he writes here, the Ayin Sham Sivan Kuf Peites, the Kuf Tzaydal in Kinyan Ha'eno Yehudi. Then take a look. Those are the places where you'll see the discussion about how to affect the Kinyan with a non-Jew. And this again practically will come up on Erev Pesach every year with Mechiras Chametz. Okay. Yes. The question?
It actually been a court case about selling kosher food Friday night at the city. If you went out to the Second Circuit, there was a court case about the company KSI had a franchise from Aramark to sell kosher food at Shea Stadium. The main holder, Aramark, said the food distributor in the city of Field agreed could not sell kosher food on Friday night. And they had what it claimed to be some sort of agreement with someone else that would end up taking over the
business on Shabbos.
Right.
Yeah.
But would still be able to claim kosher food.
Right.
there was an issue at the start to get the hashgacha or not.
So a lot of kashrus organizations really shy away.
Citation for that?
Sorry, Steve, could you hear what he said?
More or less.
More or less. Okay. So for the how many kashrus organizations function may be more, I'm acknowledging, maybe more of a stringency than what we're going to learn as the letter of the law. And I think that you see that even with the Ramah. The Ramah basically, it said if the two partners are working side by side all week long, and then the Jew just says, I'm not coming Shabbos, I don't do Shabbos, and the non-Jew keeps it open, it's technically mutter. Even if the non-Jew owns a minority fraction of the business, many kashrus organizations don't want to deal with it because they're concerned about two things. Number one, how do you have shmira on Shabbos? Can you get somebody out there to be watching over the business in terms of practically just the mashgiach? Can you get out there? And secondly, they don't want to deal with the issue of does the Jew sometimes get himself involved in what's going on Shabbos, even if it's not on Shabbos, but he starts giving commands about what should happen on Shabbos, so he gets to be sticky. That's why I think a lot of kashrus organizations shy away from getting involved in businesses that have a partial Jewish ownership on Shabbos. Certainly, if it's fully owned by a Jew, makes no sense if they should be open on Shabbos, and therefore I understand why no one will give hashgacha to such a business. You lose na'amanus altogether if you're going to keep your business open on Shabbos.
But the Jew police have gone further. Like if you remember a couple of years ago, there was a withdrawal of a vad's hashgacha on a cruise ship that was providing a venue for a simcha, a wedding or a bar mitzvah, whatever it was, and there was mixed dancing.
Right. Yeah. That's like an Isser Skila, no, so that's always a question. Should the kashrus organizations get involved in what happens at the events that are being catered under their hashgacha?
They're there for the food.
Right, that's their job. But they may see themselves as being larger than just that. But that's policy, and that's not halacha. That's policy, not halacha. Although they may say it's halacha because you have to make a macha sometimes of certain things, but whatever. But it's not related to this halacha, first of all. Let's put it that way.
There's also an issue that there was recognition that things had to be more than 50 years ago. Barnes Candy was both simultaneously Jewish controlled, but it was also publicly traded, American Stock Exchange.
Right.
And it had to deal with particular Passover. Sale of chametz.
Right.
What Barton's always had was there was always a Gentile officer with a significant role. In other words, they didn't just call somebody out.
Mm-hmm.
And the OU would sit down with him, deal with him. In
terms of the mechira, yeah.
Yeah, it was more than just. I mean,
a good sale, a good mechiras chametz really should involve a non-Jew who could, in theory, pay for all the chametz he's buying.
Right.
If you start to make a sale with somebody who can't afford, $100 to make a purchase for $100, that's calls into question the sale from the beginning. I know that when we do it here. The person on the other end is a gavir. I don't know if he's Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett once bought the chametz in Omaha from the rabbi there. I think it was rather gross. He once made a kinyan with Warren Buffett to buy the chametz, who I think could afford it.
Could have been a down day.
Right, but it doesn't have to be Warren Buffett. But it has to be somebody who can who can afford technically what they're buying. Okay, let's go back upstairs. We're on the second line of the page. V'im nishtatfu b'chonus v'lo hisnu. V'yachzor kol echad v'yitol chelko v'yivatlu hashutafus v'achar kach yachzor lishtatef v'yasem etchila. If they are partners in a store, right? Not karka now. Now I'm talking about a field like we are in the previous case. Now let's talk about a store. No, a store.
Okay.
The chanut. Okay. So each one should return his chelek of the partnership. It's the same idea here. nullify the partnership. This actually may be similar to what Tommy you were saying before, by the way. Maybe it doesn't work by karka. The karka, you just to declare, I guess, null and void. You also run the risk of somebody coming in and chopping land that is ownerless. But here, if your partner's in a store and you didn't make a stipulation at the beginning about this partnership, so you should go back. Each one should go back and take his chelek, be mevatel the chelek. Be mevatel the shutfus, right? Right. They should take their portion of the business, be mevatel the partnership of it, and then afterwards come back together and make another tonight. So that doesn't sound like a little bit what you were saying. Kind of dissolve the partnership and come back together, right? But that's important to do it. You have to draw up a new document, be mevatel, your part of this, and then come back into the deal.
What about if they own the property that the store is on? So they're not actually getting any profits from the land itself.
Right, but
They're just getting profits
from
from
the
the
business.
business. So do you have to do both, or can you?
No,
just do
I think if the reason with the karka is if you're going to work the karka, like it's like a
Okay.
field. I think if it's just there's a store on top of the land and you jointly own the land, I think you could redraw just simply the business partnership and not have to deal with the land
And if you're
partnership.
charging for parking on that land, you're
That's a
now
different
getting
story now.
profits from the
From the
land.
land. The question is though, is that I guess I don't know, maybe it's profits from the karka itself. Yeah, you should offer
So you
free
have to do
parking.
both? You have to.
Maybe
actually do-
because if you not just the merchandise that you're selling on top of that karka, but you're actually making a profit from the land. It's like the grains. The grains come from the ground and you work the land and you earn profit from the land. There it emerges from the ground. I don't know if it's a little bit different. That this is just simply you're letting a car park on top of the ground.
But you have to do something to the ground. You have to pave it. You have to keep up the.
Right. You
have
might
to keep it up with-
you might have to do that in that situation. It's a good point.
This is all very
Okay, let's keep
conceptual.
karka.
This is all
Yes.
very conceptual. At the end of the day, there are a lot of tax consequences today for doing this. When they were doing this, you could sell something and rebuy it and then return it back. You can't do that today.
Practical level, it's not so simple. All these things. I acknowledge that. Every time you make a transaction, you probably get taxed on it, and you have to refile the new
that's the
LLC
point.
and everything.
That's the point. You got to unwind it.
Correct. Yeah, you have to go. So it's the
from-
real
from a
deal.
legitimate business perspective, and that's why I raised the issue. It's almost like a kinas. It's going to cost money to.
Yeah, for sure. You have to go back and undo it. That's what the halacha would tell us to do. And you're right, Steve. It's probably more complicated today than it is than it was when the Shulchan Aruch was writing these words. Absolutely. Ve'im kiblu akarka lasos bo malacha b'shutofus yivadlu ashituf. They received the land to do the work on it. Now here, so Hinda, to your point, let's say they got a deal together. Sounds like they don't own the land, but they got a deal where they have permission to work the land as partners. So they are partners in the malacha. Okay, so yivatlu ashituf, so they should undo their partnership. V'yimochalu zeh lazeh, and be mochel to this one to that one about the deal that they had before. Completely be mochel each other. V'achar kach yachzru lishtatef v'yasnu b'tchila, and they come back together to partner together, and then they can make the Tanai right from the beginning. Okay, let's see. Let's see the Ramah now. The Ramah writes, "V'im yirtze lahaskir la'eno Yehudi chelko v'Shabbos." If the Jew wants to sell to the non-Jew his chelek on Shabbos, or l'sochro b'kiboles, or to basically give him the business, his part of the business as a kiboles, as a almost like he's a contractor. If you do X amount of business, I'll give you a percentage of my half of the business. Sorry, I only have a half of the business, but if you do X, I'll give you a percentage of my profits in the business. So the Rama writes, Shari, it's permissible. Commotion is bar el b'sofsim and reish memdal inyan mechas umatbea the shari, just like the case of the tax collector or the coinage, the person who's in charge of the coinage, where we talked about that you can sell that business. B'chol shekeh in kan, certainly all the more so here, the shari im shutafos ha'inahudi, because you have a partnership between a Jew and a non-Jew. Now, what's the question that should exist? What's the question that everyone should raise here? The Magen Avram was very bothered by this comment.
Well, it should be, because he's unwinding the concept that a priori you have to unwind everything. And here he's coming up with a Band-Aid.
Okay, good. So definitely number one here, you have a big Band-Aid. Okay, that's number one. What else is a problem? What we learned a few weeks back on Reish Mem Daled. When was there a heter to get involved in the tax collecting business? So that you could sell your portion of the Shabbos part of the tax collecting business? So remember, the Ramah Paskin, that was only behefseid gadol. When there was a great financial loss, it was a big kula to rely on the rush that you could do this. Didn't say it was the best thing to do. It was just when it was a hefseid gadol, talking about the person was going to lose. Remember that the taxes as people would come through the town. Someone was saying, Steve, you explained this very well. How was it? It was like a pole. It was like when you cross the George Washington Bridge. If you collect it, you collect it. If you don't collect it on Shabbos, they're going to still walk across the George Washington Bridge, and you've now lost a lot of business that you're down. You paid a lot to the government so that you could have this business. They gave you the contract, and now you're passing up every seventh day on good business, and now you may actually come out in the red after the whole year if you don't collect what happens on Shabbos. So you get involved on selling it to a non-Jew. It was allowed behefseid gadol. And you publicize it and everything because you were going to lose a lot. Generally, we don't allow this. What if you want, you can sell your chelik of the business on Shabbos to the non-Jew, or do it in a kibolas fashion. It's mutter. It's undermines the halacha from before. So take a look at Tezvav in the Mishnah Berurah. He brings up this Magen Avram, and the Taz also raises this point. Ayin v'Magen Avram v'Taz sheniskashu bazeh me'od. They were very troubled by this, and they had a very strong question about this halacha. Delama yemuter. Why should this be permissible? This isn't what we saw in Reish Mem Daled, where we saw the Sham Shari Bishum Seda. There it was permissible because of the loss. Dafka in a situation of loss. So how does the Magen Avram weasel the Ramah out of this? He's got to explain the Ramah. The Ramah just wrote that previously. This wasn't that long ago. You can't say, the Ramah wrote it in Orach Chaim, and then when he got to Choshen Mishpat, a year later, he wrote something he didn't realize he contradicted. He just wrote this. 5 minutes ago, he wrote this. So the Magen Avram's got to give an answer here. The Magen Avram at the end of his comment says the following, in terms of how to answer this question. Dahacha Ayre Shemaskir Lo Eschelko B'Shabbos B'Havlo. Here we're dealing with a case where he sells him the Shabbos, his chelek, his portion of the business on Shabbos behavla, as a subset of a larger group of days. This is a very clever solution. I'm not sure that this is the most short way to explain the Ramah, but let's keep listening. The Hainu Shemaskilo Kol Yemei HaShabbosos, he sells all the Shabboses of his Shalom, im Shnayim or Shlosha Yamim Yemei HaChol, with along with 2 or 3 days on the weekdays. Therefore, what happens? The two leka kan mishum schar Shabbos. I'm not benefiting from the Shabbos, or I trade you Shabbos for Sunday, and that's called schar Shabbos. So umash deshari bekiboles, and that okay. What about the kiboles? When that's permissible in the kiboles, when you have like a contractor kind of situation. Myri gamkein shelo yiched lo Shabbos bekiboles. I didn't tell you have to work on Shabbos. It's like any contractor. I tell you, I want you to do X, right? Fix my TV, build my cabinet. I didn't tell you have to do it on Shabbos. I just want the job done. You chose to do it on Shabbos. That's your prerogative. So maybe that's also what you could say here. And he says, when you do that with Bikibos, Ela Bistama, what you're saying is, Kol Ema Shetasa Ba'atzbacha. Anything that you do with my chelik of the business, and you get me, and you make X. If you make X, you make $200 on my chelik of the business. So you get a fixed number. I didn't say I have to do it on Shabbos. So over the 3 days that I've given you permission to my part of the business, don't have to be Saturday. If you make $200 on my portion of the business, I give you $100 of my portion, right? Like it's a corner. You're giving me a portion of the business, right? But it's a fixed portion. The Ikar Ravusa da Harama, the addition, the essential addition part of that the Ramah has here, the Kamashman, the Lochai Shinan Baza, the Marisayin. We're not concerned here at all about Marisayin. It's not the concern. Shiom Rulat Sorach Yisrael, who also, they can say, the non-Jew is doing this on behalf of the Jew. Why are they not going to say that here? Everyone understands the non-Jew owns a part of the business. It's a co-owned business, right? It's not that I sold you the business on Shabbos as you're like a subcontractor or a secondary owner. I don't know what the term would be here, where like everyone knows it's Cohen's business, and then like when the non-Jew shows up on Saturday, like it works for Cohen, but really sold it, but that's Marisayin. We're not dealing with that here because everyone knows Jew and non-Jew co-own 50%, let's say, of the business together. So that's not the concern, but what was the concern here was Schar Shabbos. And that's the way you can get around the Schar Shabbos, that you're making a clear, distinct business and profit from something on Shabbos, is to sell it b'havla. That's always the workaround. The Chazal already built into the Gemara, that as long as it's part of a larger subset, that's okay. And that's what the comparison here is between Reish Mem Daled and over there, is that just like in those cases, you were allowed to sell the business, the Shabbos business for Shabbos. You own 100%. Here you own 50%. So you sell your 50% of the business to the non-Jew. There's no Marisayin concern, and there's no Schar Shabbos because you did it b'havla. That's the Ramah getting our problems. Very clever, but though I'm not so sure if it makes, not so sure I feel convinced by it, but that's his answer to the question about how this is not a conflict between the previous halacha of the Ramah.
Makes no sense at all. It doesn't.
I hear. It's a stretch to say that it's b'havla because the Ramah should have written that. The Ramah should have written that. That's a big fact to leave out, especially because he just wrote that. It's a big fact to leave out. Probably what he means, and I think he says this at the end here, there's a better answer to the question. Okay, commotion is bar, just like it says in the Reish. No, what does it mean by just like it says? Kavanah, his kavana was kemo sham de lo chashu l'maris ayin. Just like over there, we look away from the maris ayin concern. What's the comparison? That there's no maris ayin. The kol shekain, there's no maris ayin because we'll say that Cohen's under significant pressure. Everyone knows it's his business, the easy pass business, right? The toll collecting business. And everyone knows that Cohen's under pressure because if he doesn't have someone else doing the business on Shabbos, he's going to be in the red. Everybody understands that. That's how tax collecting works. The toll collecting works. So we look aside in that case to the Marisayin. So all the more so in our case when the business is actually owned by a non-Jew, in a portion of the business owned by a non-Jew, we look away from the Marisayin concern. Since there's an actual partnership, no one's going to say, who's that non-Jew? He working on behalf of the Jew on Shabbos? No one's going to say that. Oh, yes, but I did sell the business. So as long as you get around the Schar Shabbos problem, which would probably require the Havla aspect of it, then there is no Maris Ayin. And V'chein Hataz Masik Ladina, and the Taz concludes as well, a halacha, Mutar Bazeh Ela B'Havla. He says you can't do this unless you have a Havla situation. It makes no sense otherwise. Of course, the big condition here, and this again, I told you, the Kash organizations don't like this because of this fact. The Jew has to be very careful not to talk to his non-Jewish partner about what happens in the business on Shabbos. Because if you do, it's just a wink, wink, nod, nod agreement. Really, he's working on your behalf.
Otherwise, it ain't a wink, wink, nod, nod.
Otherwise, it's not a wink, wink. Exactly. It's not a wink, wink, nod, nod. And it's clearly you're doing the work. If you don't make the tonight, and he's talking to you about things on Shabbos, it's vaday aser.
Rav, I wanted to point something out that occurred to me. The Ramah was really a Talmud Chacham of Moshe Isserles. His daddy was an incredibly rich guy.
Yes.
Very rich guy with connections to the crown to the Austro-Hungarian crown at that time.
Mhm.
So I don't know what kind of businesses he had or what familial pressure he was under, but otherwise I cannot understand his thinking.
He's simply saying here that there's no Marisayin. That's all I think the Rama was trying to say, though he didn't deal with the Schar Shabbos problem. So the Magen Avraham and the Taz are basically saying, you have to deal with this. This is an issue, and the Rama didn't explicitly address it, but that's still on the table. But maybe he was only talking from a Maris Ayin concern that there's no Maris Ayin. If there's no Maris Ayin in the case of the Meches, of the toll, then there certainly is not a Maris Ayin concern here, because actually the Jew and the non-Jew co-own the business. There is nobody who's going to think that when they see the non-Jewish co-owner, they're going to think, did he get hired by Cohen to run the business? Of course, never knows. It's Cohen and Johnson. I don't know, and Johnson's working on Shabbos because Johnson doesn't keep Shabbos. It's not relevant to him. So it's a funny thing that the Rama didn't even mention, though, the whole Havlah part. That was not. It's not an insignificant portion to how to make it mutter. We will stop here. Davening is next door, and again, if you want to give me your sheets, you want to keep it. It's up to you.